Hey, fourth grade. So today we are reviewing. We said this time period occurred from, or the time period of the Great Depression occurred from 1920 to 1955. So this is the time period that we're looking at. All right, so let's review with our vocabulary words. Suffrage is the right to vote. Women were fighting for the right to vote. Depression, a time of bad economic problems, bad money problems. Stock, a share of ownership in a business. This is where people buy and sell ownership of a business. Supply and demand. American industries and farms were producing more supply than they could sell. This was happening after World War I. Unemployment, when someone is without a job. Bartering, when businesses or people swap goods or services instead of using money. Excuse me, I'm yawning. That's because it's 11:30 at night and while I'm making this video. All right, let's continue. Causes of the Great Depression. Alabama became a state in 1819, so 1919 was our centennial, our 100 years. Remember, cent, there's 100 cents in a dollar, 100 pennies, so cent equals century, which equals 100. Women's suffrage was part of the Great Depression. Women had to fight for the right to vote, just as African Americans had to fight for the right to vote. Then the 19th Amendment passed, which gave women the right to vote. It passed in 1920. However, Alabamians did not get the right to vote until 1953. So 33 years later, it took Alabama 33 years to give out women the right to vote. And this is not actually part of our, a big part of our curriculum, but I wanted you to see this is what the fashion looked like during the 1920s. There's a couple. And this is what's called a flapper, Flapper. And a flapper was somebody who was kind of a rebel, someone who smoked cigarettes and danced, and they wore it to, and back during this time, to wear a skirt at the knee or just below the knee was pretty risque, kind of, and meaning it was kind of frowned upon. But whenever they would dance, their dresses would shimmy, and when their dresses would shimmy, you could see a part of their knee, and so some people looked down on that. All right, so flappers were a generation of young women in the 1920s who had short and bobbed hair, smoked cigarettes, danced, drove cars, and explored newfound freedom brought on at the end of the World War I. All right, so other things that brought on the Great Depression. The main thing was the stock market. When it crashed, it just kind of went downhill. Banks and businesses failed. People lost their job. Supply and demand. They made more than they could sell. So, when the stock market crashed in the 20s, supply and demand changed because American farms and industry produced more than they could sell after the war. People lost their jobs and were not able to pay their debts. And banks failed because people could not pay their loans. It's a sad time. It's kind of like the times that we're having now, where people can't pay their bills or borrowing money, they can't pay it back. It's a lot like the Great Depression.